Number 3. Abigail is a spooky true ghost story about a little girl who lost her life in the 1800s. They say her ghost haunts the Spooner house in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Many years ago, there was an 8-year-old girl named Abigail Townsend who lived in the Spooner house in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Her father was a fisherman, and he was away at sea most of the time. Abigail never had a good relationship with her mother, but whenever her father left, things got much worse. Her mother became very abusive, and Abigail always feared her father leaving because she was afraid of what her mother might do. One day, Abigail's father failed to return from one of his fishing trips. Abigail's mother blamed the poor girl for her father's disappearance and took her anger out on the child. One night, poor Abigail died under mysterious circumstances. Her mother said that it was a bad tooth that killed her daughter. She claimed that Abigail's toothache turned into an abscess, and the infection spread throughout the child's body, killing her. Many people refused to believe her story. They suspected that Abigail's mother had brutally murdered her own daughter, stabbing the little girl to death in a fit of rage. Ever since that time, the ghost of little Abigail has haunted one of the upstairs bedrooms in the Spooner house. Many people claim to have seen her ghostly figure peeking out of the top window and playing with the shutters. The Spooner house is now a museum. In 2005, a group of workers were hired to do some renovations on the house. When they knocked on the door, it was opened by a little girl in an old-fashioned white dress. Later on, when the manager arrived, he was shocked to see the workmen already inside, and asked who let them in. They shrugged and said the little girl did. "What little girl?" asked the manager. They searched the entire house from top to bottom, but there was no sign of any little girl. The workmen were so spooked, and gathered their tools and quit on the spot. One woman, who used to live in the house next door, said she woke up one night to find Abigail standing at the foot of her bed. According to the legend, if you stand in the street in front of Abigail's house and say, "Abigail, come play," you will see the ghostly figure of the little girl standing in the upstairs window. Number 2. This is the true story of a haunted hotel. This is the true story of a haunted hotel room in Oregon. The hotel owners have tried to hush up the story for fear that no one will visit their establishment, but the name of it is the Oregon Cave Chateau. A woman was driving back to her home in California from Washington. It was late evening, and snow had begun to fall before she finally reached the little Oregon town where she planned to spend the night. Tired and ready for a hot meal and a good night's sleep, she stopped at the first place she came upon. It was an old hotel on the main street. The lobby had a musty odour. The seedy clerk behind the desk signed her in. Her room was on the 3rd floor, room 310. An elderly bellhop helped her with her luggage. As soon as the door was opened, a blast of hot air struck the woman right in the face. With the hot air came something else, something she could not define, but that filled her with dread. It was heavy and depressing, she explained, with the strong scent of the evil. She felt as if she was about to faint. All she said was, "It's awfully hot." The picture on screen is a genuine photo of the haunted hotel room in question, room 310. The bellhop tinkered with the radiator knobs. Then he opened the window and left. The room began to cool off, but the feeling of despair and dread grew stronger. It centred on the open square of black window space. The terror seemed to speak in her mind. She thought she could sense a voice whispering to her, compelling her to do something terrible. "Go to the window," it said. "Throw yourself out." She couldn't seem to resist the urge to jump out of the window to what she knew would be certain death. She clawed at the bedsheets, trying to restrain herself from walking towards the open window. Terrified, the woman eventually summoned the strength and crawled out of the room. She rushed down to the lobby and shouted to the member of staff that she couldn't stay another minute. She explained, "I was sure that if I stayed the night, I'd be dead by morning." She was prepared to sacrifice the money she'd already paid, just to leave. But when she went, the clerk never asked what was wrong, or if she wished to try another room. He returned the full amount of cash to her. She checked into another hotel, and had planned to be on her way early the next morning. Instead, she decided to stay over a day, and look into the history of the old hotel to see if she could discover the reason for her terrifying experience there. She visited the local library to make a few inquiries. An elderly librarian sat behind the desk. "I'm just wondering," the woman said tentatively. "Did anything shopping ever happen in that old hotel?" The librarian looked at her strangely. "How did you come upon that bit of history?" she asked. "It took the hotel a long time to squash the story." The librarian went on to tell her about what had happened. One evening back in 1948, a couple checked into the hotel as Mr. and Mrs. Oscar Smith. The next morning, hotel employees found the young woman's body lying on the sidewalk outside the hotel, beneath room 310. The man who had registered as her husband had disappeared. At first it was ruled suicide, the librarian concluded. But then they pried open her fist and found it clutched a handful of dark curly hair, not her own. So they made a search for the murderer, but he was never found. "By the way," the librarian suddenly added, "isn't that a coincidence? It all happened on November the 5th, 40 years ago yesterday." Number 1. This is the true story of the grinning skull of Burton Agnes Hall in Yorkshire. It is a story of a young girl's skull, and how it came to be bricked in the walls of this old mansion. A young lady, called Anne Griffith, who lived in Burton Agnes Hall, was walking home from a nearby village. As she came closer to her house, she was stopped on the road by a pair of men who were begging for money. The kindly Anne opened her purse to give them some money, but the evil men saw she was wearing a diamond ring. The vicious pair demanded that she hand over the jewellery. The men grabbed the diamond ring off her finger, and when she resisted, the evil men beat her savagely with a club and fled. Anne managed to crawl the distance to the gateway of her home at Burton Agnes Hall, where she was found by a servant. She was taken to her family, but was so badly injured that she died of her wounds a few hours later. But before she died, she made a strange request that shocked her family. She asked that her head be removed from her body, and it should remain within the house, or terrible things would happen. Not wanting to carry out the unusual request, her family buried the poor girl in the nearby church graveyard the following day. On the night of her funeral, when everyone had gone to bed, strange loud wailing noises and banging doors kept everyone up at night. These disturbing evenings carried on for 3 days. Feeling uneasy about the series of events, they decided to exhume her body. When the cask was opened, they were faced with a bare grinning skull on her otherwise normal body. Her skull was removed and placed within the house, and the tormenting evenings stopped. A few years later, when a new family moved into the house, a box was found containing Anne's skull, and a maid threw it into a cart containing rubbish. The horses pulling the cart would not move. Instead, they reared and trembled in fear. The hall shook, and pictures fell off the wall, until the skull was removed from the cart and replaced inside the house. When local villagers informed the new owner about the legend of the grinning skull and Anne's death, the skull was bricked up in the wall within the house, so it could never be removed. Although nobody knows the exact location of the skull, legend has it that the skull was buried in the wall behind the picture of Anne on the main staircase. Every year, on the anniversary of her death, Anne's ghost can be seen emerging from the picture, floating down the staircase, through the house, and then down a lane behind the house where she disappears. Well, anyway guys, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed, then please leave a like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. I hope you enjoyed the kind of change in stories, instead of it just being Let's Not Meets, having a different variety. If not, then just comment down below, and I'll maybe change it back. Well, anyway, I hope to see you soon, and I will speak to you later.